So I'm going to take you through grading between sizes, and I'm going to take you through it in two different sections because it depends a little bit on whether you're going from a smaller waist to a bigger hip or a bigger waist to a smaller hip. So I'm going to start by doing what I need to do, which is bigger waist to smaller hip. And in this example, I'm going to take you through a 24 waist to a 20 hip. And this is the approach you would take for any time you're grading to a smaller size at the hip. So we're going to begin with our pocket pieces. The first thing you're going to do is take your pocket facing, which is number 6, and you're going to take your lower pocket, which is number 5, and we're going to place them together as if they had been sewn. That's the general principle here for a little bit. So you're going to align them together as if they'd been sewn and just tape them loosely together. We are going to be taking them apart again afterwards, so you don't want to really firmly tape them down. The next thing we're going to do is tape the top pocket to the pants. Now, I should have already mentioned, we're going from a 24 waist to a 20 hip. The pocket should be the size of the waist. So in this case, we're doing a 24 pocket because we're doing a 24 waist. So I'm going to take my top pocket now. I'm going to place that aside for a second. Now, what we want to do now is make these as if we had sewn them. So what would all the pieces look like when they were together? So this piece would actually be over the other way and it would be behind here because that's how the top pocket works. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to slip it behind. And again, I am just going to tape it ever so gently because we're going to be taking it apart again. So on the back, this is how the piece would be. And I'm just going to do a little tab over there to keep it in place. Okay. So next, we're going to take this 5 and 6 unit and we are going to do the same thing. We're going to make it as if this had been sewn. So this would go underneath here and the pocket would be sticking out here. Now, all the time here, we're aligning the 24 pocket with the 24 lines on the front. But you can see when I printed it, I printed both 24 and 20 lines. You need both of them there. So you need to print both the sizes you're going to use. And again, I'm just going to do a little bit over there to loosely have it down. So what you can see now is this is what the pattern would look like when it's sewn. Like your pocket would be in here. You would see this extra piece making your side seam. So now we're going to mark the sizes that we're going to go between. So 24 at the waist. So what that means is just the outermost point. So I'm just going to indicate the outermost point. That's the 24 waist. And then we're going to mark the 24 hip. Now, on the crotch side of things, this is quite easy. So, sorry, we're going to the 20 hip because we're going down in the hip. So we come round and at the crotch point here, we're going to circle the 20, so the smaller size. And then at this other crotch point here, again, the 20. So this is the bottom of the fly. This is like between your legs here. So we've got 24 up here, 20 and 20. Over here, slightly more tricky. Okay, let's make sure that's lined up there. So we are going to extend the 20 line up just a little bit at the point where it turns into the pocket. So you can see here, this is the angle where it turns into the pocket. So I'm just going to add a little extension to help me. I'm going to look underneath to see where the notch is, and it's here. And I am going to draw a line across this one at the notch height. So that is the notch height, and I'm drawing across here. And this is our size 20 hip. So it's just a tiny bit up from where the junction was there. So we have those marked now. So now we are going to redraw these edges. Now, traditionally you want to draw curves, but sometimes it isn't a curve anymore because if you're going from bigger to smaller, sometimes you are simply straightening it out, which makes a lot of sense because I do indeed have straight hips. So in this case, I am going to join up the outer waistband at 24 and the hip at 20. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I can put a little bit of curve in there. Okay, I tell a lie, I have a little bit of curve. Okay. So I'm using a French curve here and I'm just joining these lines up. And don't worry too much about like which pattern piece am I hitting. You just follow that line. So there's a bit of a curve there. So we've remarked the outer line. Now we need to remark the pocket line. So we're just going to start at the 24 pocket opening, which is here, and go down to the same point on the hip. And this is a straight line. So just going to go straight from the one to the other. Okay, so we have a new side seam going from waistband 24 to hip 20 and a new pocket going from 24 to 20. So now let's deal with the front. So we have two options here. The first option is we can grade through the crotch curve. So what we're going to do in this case is we are going to keep the 24 all the way down the crotch. We're going to actually keep the 24 here as well at the bottom of the fly. And then we're going to grade from the bottom of the fly to this point. So let me show you. You are going to be doing a curve here. And you want to try and maintain a nice smooth curve as much as you can. Now, as you can see, the downside of this approach is you are changing the crotch curve. So depending on your body, this may work great or it may not work great. It's an option. So this is the first option. You're grading from the 24 to the 20 through the crotch curve, and then you would continue to cut down the 20 leg. That is option one. Option two, in some ways, is a little bit more sophisticated, but it also depends a little bit on what sizes you are going between. So in this case, we use the dart to remove the extra room. So in this situation, what we would do is instead of starting out here at the 24, we'll actually go down the 20 line. So we would go down here. We would go around the 20 and stay on the 20. Now, what you might be thinking at this point is, hold on, now I've made it too small because I need a 24 at the waistband, not a 20. So what we would then need to do is we would need to effectively add back this amount of space. So it depends again a little bit on what size you are making. So let me just measure this. So this for me is 1/2 inch. So this distance is 1/2 inch. And what I would then do is remove 1/2 inch from the dart. Now, in this situation, the dart is 1/2 inch. Just so happens that going from a 24 to a 20 is 1/2 inch. So all I would do is literally not sew the dart. And if you think logically, this kind of makes sense, right? Like you need more space through the waist. So instead of pulling the waist in more, you're actually leaving it to be out. So in this specific case, all you would do is not sew the dart. If you were going a different combination of sizes, you might find that you would still have a dart, but it would just be made smaller. So if say the dart was this big, I would measure 1/2 inch, I would cut it and I would make it 1/2 inch smaller. So I would bring in each leg by 1/4 inch and I would make my new dart like this. And then I would have taken 1/2 inch out of the dart. Now, the limitation on this is, what if this is more than 1/2 inch? Well, you can't make a negative dart, so that's the point at which it's a limit. So if you find that when you're grading between sizes, you wouldn't be able to manipulate the dart because this is too big, then you need to do the first option that I showed you, which is going along the bigger size here and then grading through the crotch. So what I would say is, like, ideally, this second route is the better one if you're able to do that, because you're using the dart in a more logical way. But if you can't do that, then you can do route one where you grade through the crotch. So now we've marked the new sizes, we can cut the pieces. I have truncated this piece, as you can see, just to make it easier, but you will have a whole piece. So I'm going to cut up the size 20 here, and I'm going to assume that we did option 2, which is grading through the dart. So I'm going to cut up the pink color. Go down here. So on the front, it's easy. On the side, it's a little bit less easy. Okay, so there is our new front piece. And we are simply going to erase the dart. So all we do is just cut the dot excess off. That's very simple. Okay, now on this pocket area, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut up the side seam. Again, I'm cutting up the 20, which is the hip size. And then I'm going to cut through all the layers. And the nice thing about this is we know that they're all going to be perfectly the same. Up to there. Now I'm going to remove the 5 and 6 and keep the 7. So let me just do that. Try and not rip the paper. Okay, so I have my new 5 and 6 pieces, and that's it. I don't need to do anything else to them. Just separate them out and they're ready to go. Now we need to do the pocket. So I still have number 7 pocket, so make sure that it's fully aligned on the back properly. And now we're going to cut the front and number 7 through this new pocket line. There we go. And now I can undo number 7. So there we go. We now have all of our pieces ready. They've been graded between a 24 waist and a 20 hip, and they will all match up perfectly. So now let's move to the back leg. So this is a lot easier because we don't have to worry about the pockets. So the first thing to do is mark the top corners of the back, which are going to be the 24. Then I'm going to mark the hip size at the height of the 24 notch. So here on the 20 and across. You can use a ruler to go across here on the 20. And then I'm going to put the 20 at the front of the crotch curve here. Now we're simply going to join the dots. So this is more just easy, classic grading between sizes, frankly. This is the kind of one that's fairly easy. So I'm just going to join that one up. And then I'm going to do the same here. So in this case, we have 2 options actually, again, for grading. So the first one is grading through the crotch curve. So it's going to be the same principle again about whether you use darts or not. So here I'm going to go from the 24 waist on a slight curve to the 20 here, and then just follow through the 20. So there we go. So that's the first option, not touching the darts. So again, we have a second option to use the dart instead. So we are going to start this time with the size 20 at the back center seam, going all the way up to top. And for the back, we're just going to keep the exact same curve and just use the 20. And then we're going to measure here. So again, this is about 1/2 inch. Now this time we got a much bigger dart, so it's a little bit easier to play with this. So what I'm going to do is, so that's 1/2 inch. I'm going to measure a 1/4 inch in on either side of this dart. There we go. And then I'm going to rejoin it up. So now we have a smaller dart, and that's where it will give us the extra room that we need at the waist. Now, eagle-eyed of you may notice, oh, what has this done to the welt pocket? It's not ideal. True. Honestly, the easiest thing to do in this scenario is don't worry about the welt pocket for now. Sew this back piece up and then draw the welt pocket over it. It's pretty simple. Like, you just measure the length of it and the width, and then apply it once you've sewn it. If you want, you can try and make it all work here, but honestly speaking, the way that it's broken apart makes that a little bit tricky. So instead of doing that, make your life a little bit easier. You can mark this one on the fabric if you want as like a starting point, but once you've sewn the back leg, I would then just remark it on, making sure that it is totally parallel. So that's the back leg if you're grading between sizes from a bigger waist to a smaller hip. Now I'm going to take you through the opposite, which is grading from a smaller waist to a bigger hip.